All right. So peer support, the way I view it, is universal in the sense that it isn't separating, like, oh, let me use this box, that box, but kind of an integration, right, of the experiences, the tools that we have. So with that being said, in the chat, I'm going to ask each and every one of you to keep it real. How did you practice self-care right now during your break? You don't have to go into paragraphs. What did you do? Like, I see Kurt is still hungry because he's snacking on there. Enjoy, Kurt. I just see that's all. I didn't finish my breakfast, but I did eat a little. Nature calls, and I always pick up because you don't want to miss that call. So I did do those two things. I'm curious to see what else people have here. So squats, ooh, getting some heart rate going. Take a smoke break. Love the honesty. Still eating. Provecho, enjoy. Made some food. Cooking is also beneficial. Got some fresh air. Some laps around the yard. Got some sun. Stood up, walking. Those of you that can nap, I'm impressed. I can't do that. Save my life. Getting yourself together. Janet, organized. Fresh air, Robin. Ruth, taking care of that as well. Stretching, excellent. Bathroom breaks, dishes, Gatorade, breakfast, and so on and so forth. Excellent. So the beauty of this is that there's no one way to practice self-care. The most appropriate way is how it serves you best, right? So something that works for Renee and I may not work for Robin or Kurt or Annika, right? And vice versa. But ultimately, what helps you in the moment is what matters, right? And I say that because as we're getting started right now, self-disclosure part in terms of the workplace, Renee talked about being activated, right? AKA being triggered in that sense. And so we're going to get into a really like the core concept of peer support, which is sharing our lived experience. And it's not something that is done just randomly. It's actually part by design, right? In terms of that, it's a requirement as a student support specialist that we be willing and able to share our lived experience as necessary to help the peer, right? As long as it's helping the peer. So in the student portal for today, for self-disclosure part 1, you'll see the handout for this presentation. You also had some prep work that we're going to actually apply in a moment. So I will be referencing that as well. Okay, can you give me a thumbs up if you have your access to this presentation as well, so I know people are following along? Thank you, Janet, Kurt. Thank you, Brandon. All right, thank you, Miriam. Okay, so here we go. Did you have a question or a comment, or just raising your hand? Never mind. Thank you for that. All right, so we're not going to review our gathering guidelines because we spent a lot of time kind of setting the tone, right? Now, something that I'm not sure if I've shared with you yet is that I spent many, many years as a public school teacher. So at age 21, I started teaching 4th grade. I've taught every grade from 4th to 12th. I've had students as young as 5, old as 85. And so I put in a lot of time and energy into this. For me, the way I've been able to kind of set the foundation, regardless of age, it's about respect. And it doesn't matter if you're a parent, if you're just a neighbor, if you're a cholo gangster, whoever, people want and need respect, right? And so that's what it basically comes down to, respecting ourselves and respecting each other and the space here together, which I believe we all have the message, right? Okay. So along those lines, okay, this is what I want you to do next. In the chat, if you did the homework, you just go back to it. If you didn't, think about it now. What comes to mind when you think of the term stigma? So in the chat, whatever comes to mind in the next 60 seconds, when you think of stigma, and I'm going to start reading these off as they come in. Last time, what does stigma mean to you? Shame, collective social assumption. Unfair, negative stereotype, not understanding someone, unfair judgment. Someone says no, negative stereotypes on mental health. Let's take another 30 seconds. Fear, being judged, stereotypes, so social disapproval, discrimination based on perceived difference or deviance, looking down on people, wrong ideas about people. Another 15 seconds, judging. All right. Bias or belief about an individual group of people, usually negative, or assumption. Excellent. Let's take another 10 seconds. Something being taboo. All right. So it seems like y'all got the gist. Y'all know what a stigma is, right? And I don't think anyone in this room is like, oh my gosh, this is the best stigma I've heard of my life. You want to hear it, Angelica or Talene, right? Said no one ever, right? So there are certain things that we know like, that's not necessarily coming from a loving or a kind place. What we're doing here at CAPS is breaking this stigma. Using our lived experiences is how we break the stigma, right? It's a choice though. And then I'll get back to this element of choice in a moment. Okay. Has anyone here heard of Clifford Beers at all? Yeah? Anyone know what this bell is about? If you can you unmute yourself or let us know what you know about Clifford Beers and this bell? I'm just curious.
It was the melted down shackles that they used to restrain people from in the mental hospitals.
Thank you, Matthew. It's almost like I paid you for that comment. You're on it. So Clifford Beers was a person of affluence, had resources, but he struggled with his mental health, depression. And he had to realize that when you're an outcast, when there's a stigma, it don't matter how much money you have if people think there's something wrong with you, right? Or you're a part of those people now. But what I think is powerful about this image, and I think about this too, and I talk to Renee and Helen all the time, I was like, look, if I was born 50, 75 years ago, and I struggled with severe depression, I would have been locked up. I would have been put in shackles as well. There's parts in the world right now where people are still put in shackles because of their mental health conditions in 2025. So what they decided to do is they decided to make, once again, a gift out of not belonging, not being wanted. And they melted down all those shackles and they made a bell, right? And this is idea that we can create, if we choose to collectively, create something positive out of something negative that came to be. So that's why this is important. And that's what we're trying to do here. We know the realities of the world. We know stigmas are out there, but we each are making a choice to be part of the solution. And that's why we're so grateful that you're here with us. Okay. So along those lines, when we talk about self-disclosure, there are generally 4 reasons why we choose to self-disclose. Because we're trying to provide some support and assistance. And I heard this in the breakout rooms during self-awareness and self-care, meeting them where they're at, providing examples, connecting. Another reason is to be the holder of the secret. Hey, I need to share something with you really, really important. You promise not to tell anyone, right? Have you heard those words? Mm-hmm. The third one is to see if we need to apply reasonable accommodations to meet that person's needs, right? Learning needs, social emotional needs. And lastly, is for a human connection and understanding, right? We don't necessarily have to experience every single thing that the peer is going through to understand, to have empathy, to connect, right? That's where we put in the work. We act out of love. We use our consciousness and our understanding, right? Does anyone know the trick about keeping a secret? What's the trick about keeping a secret? Anybody?
Keep it a secret.
Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
Don't tell anyone.
Don't keep your mouth shut, right? Because the second as you let it go, and then Matthew's like, yeah, I got you. And then Tony's like, hey, what Carlos say? Well, you promise to tell anyone? And you all know the domino effect, right? And it's just human nature. We're inquisitive, we're curious. Sometimes we're chismoso, and others we like to tell secrets, and so on and so forth. So if you want to keep a secret, keep it to yourself if that's the case. All right. Can someone please unmute themselves and read the focus question here for this activity we're going to do next?
Focus question: have you ever disclosed something personal that others might not know by looking at you? What was your experience and why? Example: living with an addiction, a mental health diagnosis, physical health diagnosis, and trauma, etc.
Thank you so much for reading that. Did you have a question or comment, Tony? Okay, no worries. So if you have your version of these handouts, this is what we're going to use to next in the breakout rooms. If you do not have it accessible, take a picture of this. So I'm going to partner you up in a moment, and I'm going to ask you to talk about something that may not be obvious just by looking at us, right? We're so used to just use so much of our information based on what we see, but we know that there's more to us, right? The whole don't judge a book by its cover. Examples of these are, for example, if you journey with an addiction, a mental health diagnosis, a physical diagnosis, some type of trauma that you may have experienced. Once again, you're going to be partnered up. And let's give you, boom, boom, boom. Let me recreate these. You'll have 6 minutes. That gives you 3 minutes a pop to have plenty of time. And then, by the way, this is intentional in terms of activating a conversation. The one thing you'll hear me repeat on purpose is that you are not going to be forced to share anything that you're not comfortable with sharing. Does that make sense? At any point here. So even though this is self-disclosure and a lot of people are going to be practicing this tomorrow, please know it is your right and your duty. If you're not feeling comfortable, if you don't feel safe, you don't have to. I will only share what I feel comfortable and safe with as well. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. All right, so once again, you're going to partner up, you're going to go back to that question, and you're going to keep it real. Let's pause the recording here. All right, y'all, as everyone is making their way back, I'm going to just show this up real quick, and then I'm going to take it up so we can see ourselves, right? So the prompt was to respond to, have you ever disclosed something personal that others might not know by looking at you? What was your experience and why? Okay, and so Are there a couple volunteers, 2 or 3, who are willing to share either, what yours is or kind of what you discussed as a pair? Talene, maybe you can start off, please. Thank you.
Hi. So I think one of the biggest things in my life is, and I did share this already, but one of the biggest things is just my past. We know when people hear about my past and the things that I've gone through, like I've been to prison like 3 times. I'm from the streets of LA. I used to be homeless, and now I own like all these businesses and I do all these things, and my life has changed significantly, but my life was pretty dark for about 20 years. And so usually when I share that information, people are usually like, who are you? Like, how did you do all that? Like, they can't picture that life in this person, and and vice versa. So it's really cool. I love self-disclosure. I've always loved self-disclosure. I'm part of the Alcoholics Anonymous program. So I'm all about putting all my business out there in the program. So but yeah, it's a really nice feeling to go from one completely different life, and people are like, I can't even believe that's who you are, or that was your life at one point. So yeah.
Understood. Thank you for that, Talene. Up next, Stephanie.
Yeah. So mine was mostly like when people see me and stuff when I'm around them, they wouldn't know that I've been through a lot of childhood trauma and a lot of trauma through my life, and they would never know about my past addiction. And when I do bring it up to certain people, they're like, "What? Like I didn't know that." Well, you just smile and be who you are, and people don't even notice the hurt that you've been through or anything like that. So, I was telling her that I work in a toxic environment right now, so I don't share that kind of stuff with like say like my bosses, because I feel like that's another thing that they can judge. Oh, well, she was going through this, so this is why she's like this, or I don't like to give people a reason to judge as well. So that's my thing.
Understood, Stephanie. Thank you so much for keeping it real with us. Ruth, you're up next, and then we'll go with Alexander.
Thanks. I'm just going to share something that happened recently. So, I've been looking for work. I'm also working in a very toxic environment. So, um, and I had a job interview, second interview recently, and it's a position where, I would be supporting people who are coming out of jail and prison, um, with resources, housing, connection to whatever resources they need. And I was asked about my lived experience. So I shared that I've been homeless for 30 years off and on, and that I've had my own house for the last 7 years. Um, and I have a friend who also works at the organization who let me know that the person interviewing me was concerned that I had been homeless for 30 years. So he heard homeless for 30 years. He didn't hear off and on. He didn't hear that I've had my own place for 7 years. I didn't share that I got to this place on my own. I didn't have support from any, outside agencies or people or anything else. I did it on my own. And it felt, excuse my language, really shitty. Because that's like one of the reasons that I connect so well with like almost anybody is because I've been through so much. And I was expecting that to be viewed as an asset rather than a liability. Um, so yeah, that's
Thank,
my share.
thank you. Thank you for your share, Ruth. I appreciate you. Okay, Alexander, you're up next.
Can you hear me now? So
Yep.
I was sharing in a group that people look at me and always feel like I have it together because I always have. Um, but when I had a baby, I wasn't able to figure out the balance in it all, like work, school, career, everything. And right now is I'm at a point where I'm trying to learn how to balance it all and just taking one day at a time. And I think it's very hard for me too because I've never experienced it. So one thing I learned in this whole process after having my child is that I really didn't have it together as much as I thought I had it together. Because all the old stuff started coming up and it's like, oh, I used to but no, I was just always figuring it out and passing it on and not dealing with things. So I think that I have learned to just keep encouraging myself to keep moving forward and not think about what I should have did, but what I could now and how to work past it and deal with it and not just push it under the rug. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing your learned experience with us. Matthew, Yolanda, and we'll continue from there. Go ahead, Matthew.
Am I allowed to share about my partner's experience was, or just mine?
Just your own for right now. Thank you, Matthew, for
Okay,
clarifying.
no problem. Glad I said that. Normally when people see me, they're like, "Oh, you're a happy-go-lucky guy." And then if something is brought up, I'll tell them like, "Yeah, I have suicidal thoughts a lot of the time. You know, it's just something I've grown up with since I was 7, 8 years old." I don't talk too much about it because anytime I've ever disclosed it, people just kind of go like, "What? Wait, whoa, whoa, whoa! You're weird. Something's wrong with you. You're scary. You're dangerous." And it's just like, 5 minutes ago, I was one of your best friends, and you acted like we were just nothing could break us apart. And then all of a sudden, you hear that, and it's just like, I don't know if I want to hang around you anymore. So I've just learned not to care too much about what people think. And then if they're going to be really my friend, they'll realize it doesn't change anything about me. I'm still the same person they knew, and that they'll eventually get over it.
Well said. Thank you for that, Matthew. All right, Shauna, you're up next.
Okay, I was talking to my partner and he was disclosing about him being in prison for 28 years. And for that told me if that's if you having some way of feeling about it, keep more expressing it to where it no longer bother you. Because once you keep expressing, then you'll learn to accept it. Correct?
Encouragement. Thank you for that reminder, Shauna.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Last but not least, Annika, you're up.
Something that a lot of people don't know about me is I've been in the street, I've lived on the street, I've been to an institution, I've, struggled with mental health around all of that. And people ask me questions or they'll talk with me and they don't, people can't see our experience by looking at us. And I feel very strongly that, my experience has made me stronger and, no matter what situation I actually live in a place and it's not, I'm looking to move, but, I learned that my experience is what keeps me strong. And even if it's something that I don't like or someone else doesn't like, as long as I like it, that it's something good for me. If I'm doing something good for myself, I hit the ball like in baseball or something, and I make sure that ball goes the other direction, because I'm fine. I'm just enjoying the sunshine and I'm, handling my business. I'm taking care of myself today. I'm taking care of my kids and it's, even though I've been to certain places, it's experience. And I think that's really important that, some people will look at that and, they question our experience, but it's like, what are we doing today for ourselves? And I think that what are we doing to, make it a better day for ourselves? And what are we doing? What are our goals? What is our, what do we want our future to look like? Some of us have been asked that. And so as long as I continue acknowledging and working on what I need to, and I just stay positive, I just keep swinging the bat and making sure that ball goes in the direction that, is good for me and my family and my recovery. I always put my recovery first, and I always am working on that. So it's really important. It's, remember who we are, remember, where we came from. Sometimes that's, that it's sometimes, it's hard to remember that, but to work on it and to, to work through that is just very powerful. And it's what's kept me sober for 7 years. So I'm just, I'm thankful for that. A lot of things have happened in my life today that I one day it wasn't, and it was happening the exact opposite. And I said, I don't want this for me anymore. I don't want this for my kids. I don't want this, I need to do something different. So no matter where I am, no matter, where my family is, that I have that, and they have that too. It's important that they have that, to know that, you know, I'm in a good place and I'm supporting myself, and I'm, you know, I go to church, I go to school, you know, a lot of things that what I'm doing differently today is working, whereas one day, you know, before, I had to make some changes. So anyway, that's my time.
Thank you so much, Anika. Thank you for your share. You're keeping it real. So now, you know, we have multiple versions of kind of how we see this process here, right? And the idea here, and the reason why we kind of start with this question, is that, you know, human beings are complex. Each one of us is, and no one can really know everything about us by simply looking at us, right? And it's that whole thing: do not judge a book. Hey, do not judge a person by what they seem to look like, right? You've heard it right now. You don't look like you've gone through X, Y, and Z. What does that mean? Right? By looking at me, you know, I shave, I wash my hair. Can you tell that I suffer from depression every day? That I also journey with suicidal ideation if I didn't tell you that? Right? To Matthew's point, give me a second, Matthew. And so the idea here is that we're going to go deeper, right? But in order to get into that depth, right, of human connectedness and human contact and actually support, we need to do that with ourselves, right? Because what if you're working with a peer and all of a sudden you're activated, aka triggered, and you have no freaking clue why? That's going to impact that relationship, what you're saying, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're doing. So we're coming back to our humanity. That's the basic premise. Go ahead, Matthew, and then we'll continue.
Actually, I just want to say the person I was partnered with disclosed that they had a physical chronic ailment, and they said they don't they tell people they don't look like you're sick, is what she said, that people respond to her. And then she responds back of, how does sick look?
Yeah, I can go down that rabbit hole. I appreciate you sharing that. I've definitely had that happen to me as well. So this is what we're going to do next. So today is part one, self-disclosure in the workplace, right? Because that's the whole idea as peer support specialists. So today we're going to lay the groundwork, the informational piece to kind of get the ball rolling. Tomorrow, our only class will be self-disclosure part two. That means that tomorrow, any one of us, myself, Helen, Renee included, who are willing and able and comfortable enough to share a part of their journey that brought them to CAPS, will have up to 3 minutes to do so. So similar to, you saw people talking and there was a timer that'll be on there, right? You'll see, like, if you're getting to and passing that 3 minutes, out of respect to the whole, I will start counting you down, because we want to make sure we have enough time for everyone who chooses to participate, right? Once again, I'm an echo here. You do not have to participate, right? I personally believe that what makes self-disclosure so powerful isn't necessarily just the person who's speaking, but more importantly, the 40 plus other people who are choosing to actively listen and care, right? With an open heart and open mind. So keep that in mind in the background as we go through this, because now we're going to go through some educational information. All right. So when you're working with peers, right, the idea is that when you self-disclose, and here's where it gets really tricky, y'all, and I say this with love and no disrespect, it's not about us. It's not about Hannah or Angelina or Tamika. It's about the peer. It doesn't mean that we don't matter or our self-care doesn't matter. No. But if the goal is to support that peer, then we do not make it about us and how I would respond, how I or how you should. And that's really hard, right? Because so much of our world is very ego-driven, right? And so this is about the self, hence self-awareness, hence self-care, hence self-disclosure. It's a real mind shift, right? And that's why sometimes it can be challenging. So when we're working with our members or clients, we try to give them the information about resources that they need, right? That can be a way of practicing self-disclosure. For example, I've also have had to apply for CalFresh. True story, right? It wasn't that hard to do. What was difficult was the anxiety, right? And the agoraphobia that kept me at my mom's place and kept me for a whole year to do it, because I didn't have anyone to help me do it, right? Another thing, going back to Matthew chose to self-disclose. I hope this is okay, Matthew, talking about his suicidal ideation. I decided to then return the favor and say, I also journey with suicidal ideation. I didn't go into it and make it about me, and 20 minutes later, right, where Matthew's like, okay, I didn't need to know all of that, Carlos, right? But he knows now that I heard him and that I didn't have to self-disclose. I chose to honor it, right? And then we continue, right? The other part here is to connect and really have them understand that we have their back, right? I find more and more every day, people won't even look at me in the eyes. Like, it's almost like we're zombies, right? And sometimes I feel like people, if they just had someone to hear them, someone to see them, right? The world would be such a better place. Not to solve the issues, right? They're grander, they're bigger than us, but just to be present, right? To choose to connect. And so the idea here is that we choose to self-disclose if it allows to provide information, to build trust, right? And to feel connected on a human level. Right? Along with this, something that may happen a lot is that, you know, you may be working with a peer and they're like, have you gone through something similar? It could be addiction, it could be mental health, it could be abuse and trauma. And that's where you choose. And this is where it gets really challenging, right? Because on a test, it's one thing, right? You're there, you have 4 options, you're like A, B, C, D. But if I'm working with Jonathan and he drops a truth bomb and I'm like, in that moment, I need to decide how safe and comfortable do I feel with practicing self-disclosure and what is going to benefit the peer when they ask if I've gone through something similar, right? So once again, the choices that we make. Okay? When we're going in the community, and this is where it becomes a little bit more challenging, especially with the state of our world and the state of our society and all of that, advocacy, like with Chad's class, role of advocacy, the idea is that it's individual, it's also collective, right? And although we will not ever turn this into a political scene, part of advocacy happens at the political structure. That's why there's laws in place. Civil rights movement. The only way it came to fruition is by enacting laws. The end of slavery, the Emancipation Proclamation. We can go on and on and on. So it's all together here. And so part of self-disclosure may be attending a meeting, right? And to advocate on behalf of your peer or the community. It's also important to know who's who in your communities. The leaders of nonprofits, you met Guyton, who's the executive director of Project Return, right? Be a good person to know. We just met Carrie today, someone else who's been in the game for a long time. And then the other part of this is to provide trainings. So part of Project Return is doing, the reason why I was not in class last week is because on top of being a certified Medi-Cal peer support specialist, which is a long title, I'm also working on my RAP certification, right? So my wellness recovery action plan. So then I can become a better instructor and help other people in there. The more I learn, the more equipped I am to help all of you, right? So this is a cyclical process. So these are some of the other reasons why we choose to self-disclose, especially while working in the community. And some of you may be already doing that or will do that. Okay. This is a big one, y'all. And I've heard you say it. And that's why sometimes you'll see me smiling in the background or just be like snaps and all of that, because y'all are kind of just bringing it. It really comes down, and this was echoed both in the main room and in the breakout rooms. It's not about telling people what they should do. It's about being open and honest enough to meet them where they're at, right? Addiction is hard. Alcoholism is hard. Depression is hard. Anxiety is hard. Paying the bills is hard. Looking for work is hard. Working for work is hard. Working in a toxic environment is hard, and so on and so forth, right? So can we be present enough to meet the peer and the peers of where they're at versus where we think they should be, right? We try to avoid, I'm sure you've heard it, try to avoid shooting on ourselves. Yes, I didn't say shedding, shooting, right? You should avoid shooting on yourselves. And I know it's something I need to work on as well. Right? It's really easy to fall into that trap. Yeah. So part of this also, and this is where it becomes interesting, and I'll be honest with you because some of you have been really honest with us about your current work placements. So as a former public school teacher, believe it or not, we talked about students' mental health all the time, like nothing. But when it came to our own, homie, don't play that. We don't talk about that, right? And so this is when you start to look about the culture, right, of your school organization or where you work at, right? And so sometimes we practice self-disclosure, and I'm really honored to work with Carrie, with Georgie, with Renee, with Helen, with the people at Project Return, MHAC, because we do our best to practice what we preach, right? And so it makes a difference when you do that. And we also know that not every organization has that capacity, and that's where it's your right to figure out where you need to go in terms of your own career. But we're looking at how do we connect to figure out what strengths are, right? Like Renee's and Helen for my team and so on and so forth. Looking at different ways of approaching recovery. Recovery is so individual, and that's the beauty of it. There is no one way, right? It ultimately is what benefits us. And we take a village mentality, y'all. It takes a village now more than ever, right? I can only do this because I have Renee. I trust Renee. I have Helen. I have Carrie. I have Georgie. And I trust all of you that are doing your part because together is the way forward. So we practice this to kind of continue and to build community. We kind of talked about this. So you kind of advocate at work. And then, so this is, now we're going to flip it. All right. Think about when you've been at work, maybe at school, and, you know, you're just talking to someone and say, Stephanie, hey, Stephanie, how's it going? Or Colleen, and then you're like, hey, how's it going? And then they just go, Ralph on you. They do word vomit, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about here, right? They just let it all out, right? You asked them one question and they went to the 15th one. So now we're going to flip it, because what's interesting enough is that once you become certified, when the day you pass your exam, right? You pass it, you get certified. That's the first day you become officially a certified medical peer support specialist. You get a number and everything. That's the same day you're bound by the code of ethics. So we do have a code of ethics. There's about 8 or 10 pages of what we need to do. And there's only a couple, or like, I think one, of what we should not do. And it's everything that you may be thinking about. So when do we not practice self-disclosure? Well, if I'm going to use Matthew just because he's right here next to me on my screen. Matthew says something and I don't like it. And I'm just like, oh, hell no, Matthew, you're going to get it now, right? And I start getting angry and I just start reacting. That's the key. If we catch ourselves reacting to something that is said or done, usually that's a point to check ourselves, self-awareness, right? Versus reflecting first and then being like, okay, how am I going to respond to this, right? Now, when I talk the next one, when it will be too much of an emotional wound, right? So I choose to self-disclose parts here and there. I don't go all the way down. And Matthew didn't either. He talked about suicidation. He didn't give you specific examples. He didn't go in and talk about all of that. So he kind of gauges that, right? So we want to make sure we know our audience and why are we talking? Why are we choosing to share the most challenging parts of us? And the other one, if it doesn't benefit the client you're meeting with, why would I self-disclose about my depression if that it's not going to help Sheba at all? She's talking about something completely different, right? Am I making it about me by saying, oh yeah, me too. I go through this, me too, me too. And then it becomes about the ego and not the self. So just to keep in mind that this is really tricky. I would be a hypocrite to say I don't mess up, because I do, right? But I do my best to keep this, right? And so this is why we start with the gathering guidelines and confidentiality, right? Because, hey, y'all, we get real here, as you can tell, right? We're not just talking about, emojis and stuff like that. This is stuff that really has impacts on our lives. We good so far, y'all? All right. Okay. I know we're going through a lot of information, so I appreciate you all keeping pace with me. Okay. So this is a big one, and we're going to practice this tomorrow because I struggle with this too. Ever notice when you're around a group of people and it gets quiet and people start to like trip? So she said something, right? And it has to do with our world, right? There's lights on 24/7. There's sounds all the time. There's movement. Silence is very powerful and needed, right? And so tomorrow, after each person who chooses to share is done with their share, we will honor their share with a moment of silence. And then if you choose to, you can express gratitude by unmuting yourself or in the chat. We will not give advice. We're not saying, oh, you know what you should do? Because that's not what the point is. We're just sharing our journeys, and our responsibility is to receive it openly, right? And to be active listeners. And then I talked about over-relating, right? The me too, the me too. It comes down to prioritizing where the peer is at and making it about them, right? So silence is good when needed, and let's cut back on the over-relating if it's not needed. Okay. Anybody know who this beautiful person is? Come on, unmute yourselves. Somebody tell me. You got to know who this is, I hope.
Roger something.
Mr. Rogelio.
Close, but no cigar. Who is this? Come on.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Rogers.
I was sweating over here. All right. I was like, I'm old, but I'm not that old. Come on. All right. So Mr. Rogers, right? Growing up as a kid, I loved this guy. And someone mentioned it earlier about like, I'm not sure who it was, about like, it's easy, it's not as easy to be an optimist when you've learned to be more of a realist or a pessimist, right? But what I loved about, Mr. Rogers, he pushed the boundaries. He brought in someone onto his show and he talked about, making it inclusive, right? And living that life. And couldn't we use a Mr. Rogers right now, right? Talk about it. I know I can, right? So we can all try to emulate Mr. Rogers as best as possible. Okay. So the invitation, just so you know, for tomorrow is going to be as follows. The prompt is for you to share any part of your journey that has brought you to CAPS, right? Because we're all here in CAPS together. Obviously, when you're working with a peer in the field, in the office, that's very different. But for CAPS purposes, that's the prompt, right? What are you willing to share with us about your journey that brought you to CAPS? You will have up to 3 minutes uninterrupted. Once those 3 minutes goes, if you go over, I will kindly remind you that we need to keep moving. We'll have a moment of pause, of silence to honor the person that shared. You can express gratitude, and then we'll move on, right? There are close to 45 people here. Can't tell you exactly how long tomorrow's class is going to last, but I will tell you that it's the only class we're going to have because it's intentional. right? And this is not to scare you, just to keep it real. Tomorrow's class will be heavy. It will be challenging. It may activate you, and all of that is okay. But it's also important to go through this together, because we will be stronger, and we'll be stronger together based on what we're able to cultivate tomorrow as a class. Okay. May someone please unmute themselves and read this quote by Parker J. Palmer?
The human soul doesn't want to be advised or fixed or saved. It simply wants to be witnessed, to be seen, heard, and companioned exactly as it is. When we make that kind of deep bow, to the soul of our suffering person, our respect reinforces the soul's healing resources, the only resources that can help the sufferer make it through.
Thank you so much, Sheba. Can all of you take a moment to reread that quote to yourself, and in the chat, write down a couple words. What comes to mind from this quote from Parker J. Palmer that Sheba just read for us? And I'm going to just start reading some of that as well when it pops into the chat. Hope, thank you. Hope, trust, thank you, Nathan, Victor. Community is the soul of humanity. Thank you for that one, Hannah. Vulnerability, thank you, Christopher. Recognized, just want to be heard, not fixed. You need to, just a sense of it, not to be heard and seen. Understanding, people want to be heard, felt connection to be seen. Excellent, let's take another 15 seconds. Personal growth, understanding, compassion, connection to be heard. Seen, not judged. Excellent, excellent. Connecting, active listening, last 10 seconds. Personal strength and resiliency. Not visible. Okay, excellent. All right. So this is what we're going to do next, okay? You're going to have some time in class to start preparing for tomorrow, because it does help, right? I've been doing this various times, and I'll be honest with you, each time it changes because the energy of the room changes, right? And kind of where I'm at also changes. But what does help is to be prepared, right? To have something with you. And there's many ways of doing this, by the way. Some people choose to type it all up and they read what they type or what they write by hand. Other people will have bullet points and they kind of freestyle it. It's up to you in there, okay? What we're going to do in a moment is we're going to, well, let me pause here. Does anyone have any questions or comments before we go on to the next part? If you do, okay, go ahead, Stephanie, and then Hannah. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, is this kind of like a testimony?
Yes, exactly,
Okay.
Stephanie. Yeah, and the prompt is, what brought you here to camps?
Okay.
Right? What got you here, exactly. Go ahead, Hannah.
I just want to clarify that it is not mandatory.
Correct. It is
Okay,
not
great.
mandatory to
Thank you.
share parts of your journey. Thank you for that. Exactly. So this is what I'm going to do next. I'm going to ask Renee, can you help me set up some breakout rooms, please? We're going to partner up, actually, because this is more personal, right? So you'll be with one other person. You're going to have ample time to prepare today, right? Because what I really want to make sure is that every single one of us is on the same page. Just like Hannah asked an important clarifying question, you do not have to self-disclose tomorrow if you choose not to. Okay. And you're going to have, we're going to do, let's do 15 minutes.
Okay.
We're going to have 15 minutes in there. Okay. It's going to be you and somebody else. Everyone has their own style, right? Like some people are more introverted and want to just, and right, that's fine too. Just let your partner know in the breakout room. Some of you may need some more like support. Be like, oh, Matthew, like, hey, what do you think about this? Right? Or Victor, and so on and so forth. That's fine. When I go in there, I will check in with each and every one of you just to make sure that we're on the same page, right? And then you can ask me any clarifying questions as well. Go ahead, Shanae.
I'm sorry, I was using the restroom. I understand what's the question for tomorrow, but what is the question? What are we supposed to do for today? I mean, right at this moment.
Oh, so
Speak
great
up.
question. So you're brainstorming and kind of creating a draft of what you would be willing to share, right?
Oh.
Tomorrow. Okay. That's the idea. Great question. Sounds good, Justin. Good luck with that emergency. All right. This is what we're going to do now. We're going to pause the recording. All right, everyone's almost back. Okay, we're good to go. So thank you for the candid and open conversations that are had in your breakout rooms to kind of get the ball going. What we're going to do next is actually to continue with this idea of self-care and self-awareness. You're actually going to have 15 minutes for your last break. So it is 12:01. We'll be back at 12:16. Enjoy. And yes, I will ask you what you did on your break. Thank you. Have fun. We'll see you. Thank you, Noemi. Thank you, Renee, for that. All right. I said that we had an additional 5 minutes, so please put in the chat how you chose to practice self-care so we can, this is not so we keep ourselves honest, so we also get ideas, y'all. So because I knew I had extra 5 minutes, I actually went to the restroom. I got some sunlight. You know, I was able to breathe a little bit deeply, like I walked further. sunshine, vitamin D. Let's see what else we all have in here. Smoke break. Went out with play with the kitty cats. Love those cats. What else did we all do? Checked on the kiddos, pose and music. Nice, spending time with the dog. Oh, I miss my mamas. Awesome. These are all good. Talking with someone. There we go. Snack, vibing, feed the doggies, ate lunch. All these beautiful things, right? These are the little things that, hey, 5 minutes of sunshine can be easily put in the back burner, right? Like Renee was asking us, how many of you actually take your lunch? Like I'm guilty of working through my lunch a lot. And that's usually, by the way, public school teachers or teachers in general usually work throughout their lunch. It's just kind of how it is. And so I have to unlearn. I have to unlearn that as well. Okay. So thank you for those responses. I got granola. Ooh, Shark Week. I haven't watched that in a minute. All right, there you go. Enjoy and walking and getting outside. Okay, this is going well. All right, so this is what we're gonna do next. In the student portal for the pre-work for self-disclosure, there was a handout that will show up in a second. The top of it says self-disclosure in the workplace assignment. This is what I had asked you to look at before. We talked about stigma. We talked about the reasons why people choose to self-disclose at work. And the reason I'm highlighting this for you right now is that in case you're still contemplating how to go about it, there's more of guidance here in terms of storytelling, right? This idea in terms of like questions and structure here. Remember that the prompt that I'm specifically asking each of us to focus on is what brought us to CAPS, because we are all here together in this moment. And then another way of reframing that is basically what part of your life journey would you like to share with us if you choose to, okay? So just a little more structure there. And then, okay. The other thing I'm going to do now, and I got to give a shout out to Renee because she reminded me about this. I have a question to pose to all of you, and I'm going to ask you either to physically raise your hand or to virtually raise your hand. So would it be helpful to have me model what you're going to be expected to do tomorrow? In other words, would it be helpful if I went today and had my share so you could all have that to reference? So thank you, Julia, Cecilia, Renee, Rudy, thank you. Okay, Julia, Tamika. All right. All right. Sounds Josh. Okay. You win. Fine. All right. Here we go. So this is what's going to happen in a moment. Renee, she'll put 3 minutes. She'll have a timer up for 3 minutes. Renee, her responsibility, even if I'm bawling right in it after the 3 minutes, it's out of respect for the whole. She will start counting me down. Right. So just keep that in mind. It's not personal. It's just to keep the momentum going. Okay. If at any point I stay quiet, I start crying, that's okay. It may happen. I don't know yet. We'll see. A lot can happen in 3 minutes, okay? And then keep in mind, kind of, once again, this isn't the only way to do it. This is how I choose to do it. And remember that everything I'm about to share with you, I do so willingly and openly, and with the trust that we've all committed to confidentiality, right? And that's the biggest thing here, okay? Any questions or comments before I begin? All right, sounds good. All right, Renee, let's put 3 minutes on the clock. Let's do this.
All right, there you go.
All right, so the prompt about what brought me to CAPS is very intentional. I was a student in the May 2024 cohort, a little over a year ago. How I got to CAPS, how I even got to that training was out of desperation. I had spent from 2021 to about 2024 was the longest and the hardest depressive episode of my life. 3 years. 3 years of not working, 3 years of battling with insomnia, sleeping 0, 1, or 2 hours, 3 years of anxiety to the point where I didn't leave my mom's apartment for 6 months, agoraphobia, barely showering, barely eating, not seeing anyone. I was really desperate. And even though sometimes people are paid to help us, you can tell people actually care or they're just there, right? And I got frustrated with the person at the Department of Rehabilitation I was working at. And I was like, I'm tired of just talking. I need a catalyst. I need something. And through NAMI, I've been going to connections group, support groups, and I found out about the Medi-Cal peer support specialist. And I was like, damn, this is like something I can do. And I'm so grateful that I pushed through it because I mentioned earlier, I started teaching at 21. And the reason I went into teaching was because education gave me a lifeline. I grew up poor. My mom, single parent, 3 kids, working multiple jobs. I had my first job at 12 years old. I worked at a liquor store for 12 hours to make $20 so I can participate in my Taekwondo tournament. My life started really, really challenging from a young age. And, I unfortunately, and I'm jumping around here, so I apologize if it's not chronological. I never met my biological father. I grew up with a very abusive stepfather from the age of 5 to 12. And that's where a lot of my inner work is focused on. When you grow up being told that you're a failure, that you're just gonna destroy the family, that you're a fuck up, that you don't have a father, your father doesn't give a fuck about you, that you're basically gonna be anything that's bad at the age of 5, 6, 7, 8, you start to believe it. And so I say, don't judge a book by its cover, is that people may never know with my smile, whatever, that like I think about dying a lot. And the reason is because for most of my life, I felt like I've never belonged or no one really understands me. And I don't know if I can clearly explain to you what it's like to want to both live and die in the same moment. I don't have words, but I am so grateful to have found peer support because it's brought me hope. I thought I was done teaching. I thought I was done doing stuff with the world. And I found a piece of myself that I thought I had lost forever. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity to use my lived experience to help other people. I'll pause there. That is a hilarious beat, Renee. We got to work on that
You know
one.
what? I'm sorry. We're supposed to give you that time of silence, and that's stupid.
That
I'm
was
so sorry,
actually really
Carlos.
well timed. We
I'm
will change that for tomorrow.
You could do that on mine. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so
That's okay.
sorry. I did turn some cameras off. We talked to, if you don't mind me, Carlos, I turned some cameras off because when we're pouring our heart out like that, and I see someone talking on to someone else like this, I see people moving around, so I turned your cameras off. Please, when we do this tomorrow, please be mindful and don't do that. We talked about welcoming behaviors, and someone's pouring their heart out, giving you their story, and you're just la da da. Like it's we see it on the camera, so I turned some cameras off. I'm not calling anybody out. I'm just saying, please be aware who's around you, who's walking behind you. He's pouring his heart out. Okay. I'm looking forward to hearing your stories tomorrow.
No, thank you for that, Renee. Thank you for that reminder. So since we're having this, right, I think this is a great example of why we practice what we preach, right? And just because I'm talking, by the way, doesn't mean I'm still not processing everything I've shared with you, right? The reason this works, y'all, is because we're made of energy. And so even though we're not in the same physical space, like what I gave to you was authentically me, right? And so if you were receptive enough, you felt that as well. And if you can relate to it, it may have pierced you a little bit more than others. And so to Renee's point, right, and Carrie's point and Georgie's, is being present means being all in, right? And so this is kind of what the standard will be. You will do that in your own way. Did I share everything I thought I was going to share? No. Like, were these cries real? Definitely. But this is kind of like what builds our experience together, right? Self-disclosure is really challenging because what we're doing is we're saying, here's a piece of me. Here's a part of me that I give to you willingly. I hope it helps you. And we have no idea how that person's going to receive it, right? But the beautiful thing about love is not like, oh, I give you one, you give me one back, right? Love is an abundance, right? And actually, the more we share it, the more it can come back to us in that way, if you choose to believe that, right? I'm not telling you how to experience it. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the process now? Or does it make more sense? Okay. So with that being said,
I actually have a question.
Go ahead, Shiva.
Because I think sometimes, like, thank you for sharing first and foremost. Let me thank you for that.
You're on
Sorry,
mute,
that was
Sorry.
me. I
No.
apologize. That was me, my sticky fingers.
I wanted to share, like, does it have to be my journey, like my personal journey that brought me here? It could be related to a member of my family, a community member. That's, I just wanted clarity on that as well.
That's an excellent point of clarification, Shiva. So not every single person that's in CAPS is personally experiencing a mental health condition and or addiction. Some people choose to come into peer support because a loved one, a parent, a child, a sibling, a spouse, that's fine as well. Right. And so because that's part of your lived experience, right? And that's the thing that took me a long time to learn, y'all, is that I'm the one that suffers with depression, right? But anyone who chooses to love me, especially like my mother, she deals with it too. We never talk about it, but she definitely experienced it too. So those in our community also feel it. right? And that's why peer support is mutual in that way. Thank you so much for asking that question, Sheba. Any other questions or points of clarification? And thank you for all your comments in the chat, by the way. I really appreciate it. Go ahead, Ruth.
I've struggled with this one a lot. So like a lot of my stuff is like connected to my family, right? And so and I have a very unique name. So like sharing anything, like people could track it back to, you know, like my parents or whatever. Can you maybe, I don't have a clear question, but
I think I understand. So let me know, Ruth, if I'm kind of getting what you're saying here. So can I guarantee, right? Like, in other words, do we know how people are going to receive what we share 100%? No, we do not, right? Ruth, this is why I say only share what you feel comfortable and safe with sharing, right? If there's like question, like, then leave it out, right? That's your prerogative. That's your right in there, right? Because the last thing that we want is for you to feel like, oh, I shouldn't have shared that, right? That's what we're saying. And like Hannah made it clear, you're not being forced to share anything at all. And when you do choose to share, like, for example, everything that I shared right now was real. I don't feel guilty about anything that I've shared. Was it hard? Yeah. Like, is it some of the most challenging parts of my life? Fuck yeah. Right. But do I feel guilty about anything that I shared with Brandon, with Kerr, with Chris? No. Like that, my gift to you, right? You choose what to do with it, and which tomorrow, we'll kind of flip it. Does that help a little, Ruth? Or am I?
It does, and I guess like my question is more around like I don't want to cause my family to feel uncomfortable or like that I'm disclosing something, because really I am. I'm disclosing something about my family when, if I'm talking about certain things. And I want to be careful about that. But I also want to be able, like, I know that what I share definitely helps people feel more comfortable to open up and be vulnerable, if that makes sense. So
It totally does. My encouragement for you, Ruth, and this is hard because I know you're still massaging it, is to focus on you. Obviously, I mentioned my mother, right? I didn't go into depths about that and my struggles with her. So I try to focus on me because it's me who's speaking, right? So that I understand the challenges there, right? I didn't even talk about my siblings or my stepfather as much, right? So pull back those layers, only the ones that you need to make your point. But if there's some you're not sure about, leave them on. It's okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for that question. Matthew.
I think she was getting into like confidentiality, I think is what she was trying to say.
Well, then, yeah, then I think that resolves itself. If it's, under confidentiality, then don't share it, right? Like I wouldn't talk about, anything else that I wouldn't say from like in front of my mother or anybody else that was there, right? So that's important. Utmost confidentiality goes first and foremost. So thank you for bringing that up, Matthew. Stephanie.
Well, and I think also we kind of have like a group agreement here, all of us, that like what is said here stays here. So, if anything is shared, we're not going to like go and gossip about it or do anything because it's said within the confidentiality of all of us kind of agreeing that we're sharing something that is confidential within our group agreement, so there's that trust within all of us.
Thank you for that reminder, Stephanie. And I'll be honest with you, when I shared last year with my cohort, I had no idea I was going to share as much as I did. And this is a common echo that we hear in CAPS, right? Don't be surprised if tomorrow one of you says, I've never shared this with anyone, so here I go. Which goes back to Stephanie's point that we build a foundation on purpose. And we echo it all the time because the only way we get to build on it is if we're all on alignment, like confidentiality, like we trust each other. Whatever happens here stays here. Right. And so that definitely is essential for that. So thank you for that as well, Stephanie. Yes, Yolanda.
Carlos, I want to say thank you so much for sharing. That really touched my heart. And I just wanted to say that the confidentiality portion of it, that was one of the things that really drew me to CAPS Academy and Project Return Peer Support. It was such an awesome place to open up and be able to share. We were never able to share anything with anyone until Project Return. But I will say that we are open, honest, and proud to share it anywhere. Our story you can share with anyone because we're healed. So when we're healed and we free, we want everybody to know so that we can help everyone. We're not ashamed of the stigma or what they think, or that's their issue, that's their problem. I'm happy that I'm free. So my story can be shared with anyone that you want to share it with that's going to help them.
Yeah.
And the
Thank you
same for my daughters. We're
Thank you for
free
that.
because we're healed.
Thank you for sharing that, Yolanda. And once again, that's Yolanda's talking about how she's approaching it, and everyone else has the right to choose how they approach it as well, right? We honor the
Everyone
individual.
gets to that place in their own time.
Agreed.
It took a decade.
Understood.
Everyone
Yolanda.
gets
Thank
to
you for
that place in their own time.
I appreciate it. Any other final questions or comments for tomorrow? I just want to make sure that we're all good to go, and that's it. Okay. This is what we're going to do next. As I'm finalizing here, because I chose to share, I'm also going to be recovering. You at this point, as I'm making some final announcements, you can start working on your class evaluation for self-disclosure part 1. Remember, tomorrow will be part 2, right? And then you also have a class evaluation for self-awareness and self-care. So as soon as those 2 evaluations are good to go for today, you are good to go. You have plenty of ample time here in class. It kind of worked out. I'll be honest with you, it wasn't like intentional, like, oh, we're going to give them this extra time, but I'm glad that it happened today in terms of self-awareness, self-care, and self-disclosure. Tomorrow, I know if anybody like asking like how long will class run, I have no idea because it kind of is organic. The latest you'll go to is 1 p.m. Sometimes we'll leave a little bit early. There won't be another class because we're going to ask everyone, including myself, Helen, and Renee, to really take some time to practice some self-care and self-awareness, right? Because as beautiful as these classes are, as this is, it also takes a lot out of us. So we need to pour back into ourselves. Okay. So at this point, we'll stop the recording, Renee. We're good to go. Thank you for that.